All right, welcome back to Daybreak. It's now about 8 minutes to 7 o'clock, and it's time to talk about the youth agenda in politics, health, and economy. And joining us this morning is Vania Kibui, who is a policy specialist at Y-Act. We are hoping to be joined by Senator Johnson Sakaja of Nairobi, but he's unfortunately unreachable at the moment. If you're able to reach him, we'll do so. But for now, we speak to Vania. Good morning, Vania. And let's start by looking at this year's International Day of the Youth. Of course, the day is to be celebrated tomorrow. And the theme, understandably, is youth engagement for global action. When you look at the progress that has been made in the country, because there's that championing for engagement of the young people in matters community, national, and global, why would you rate the Kenyan youth?
Oh, that's an interesting question. In terms of where you would rate us, I think that over the years, and which is why for us this was an impetus. We took this impetus as Y-Act to take a study into it. It's that over the years, what we have seen is that young people have been immensely involved in other, I would say, socio-political engagements that influence politics, but not so much at the front line, I would say, in terms of policy making, in as much as we do get into politics. So what we saw is that there's kind of a gap between the vibrant engagement you're going to see on maybe corruption monitoring, pushing for open government in community mobilization and community programs, and maybe sexual reproductive health advocacy, like I have been for years now. And so the gap was, we have young people, some, in political party participation, right? And then we have a lot of young people in these other social political movements, but there's a gap between how young people are influencing policies and decision making, I would say at that, parliament level or government level, on issues that affect them. So that's the gap. So let's say we look at the situation of unemployment. So we have I would say our literacy rates in the country are pretty good compared to, most of maybe East and Central Africa, right? But our unemployment rates are also dismal. And then on the other end, 30% of the population is of, I would say, voting age or eligibility to participate in politics. So why is it then, on the other end, when it comes to our healthcare outcomes, they're very poor? The highest infections when it comes to HIV/AIDS is amongst adolescents, right? Our teen pregnancy rates are extremely high, and as has been, kind of seen or confirmed by COVID-19. It means then that, and also as I go back to unemployment, and since COVID, there was. We had done a rapid research at Youth in Action that where young people confirmed a reduction in income, right, and high mental stress.
Right.
So young people are being excluded from many spheres of life, in as much as there is such a high appetite to want to influence the policy, the decision making, the budget process, the allocation to education, to social services. Okay. So that's the situation.
All right, Vania, and of course you're right, because even if you look at the COVID-19 infections so far that are being reported, the ages between 20 and 40 account for more than 50%, so it would appear that the young people are at the highest risk, but also Kenya is a young economy, a young country. But if you had to look at the representation, because I think we have the highest or the youngest parliament in the history of Kenya since 1963, would you say that the young parliamentarians are doing great service to the young people in advocating for their interest and also shaping policies that will be beneficial, not just for themselves, but those that will come after us?
Okay, that's a good question. So I think that young people today are grappling with, what am I supposed to do now, right? That makes sense for me and makes sense for my life and for my country. And perhaps I would arguably say that young people who run for office are probably out to want to do the same thing. But we are finding that even if we have the youngest population, the average age is 53, right? The age between, I would say that's under 35 and under, is at 6%. and Globe, that's in Kenya. That's according to the Meaningful Youth Engagement report that we just launched yesterday. And the global rate is 2%. So I can't say that we're doing that well. So the thing we find is that the institution in the way that it's established for the days of old, I would say, right? So for a young person to get involved in policy making, they have to have access to a newspaper. Right. If you look at maybe the analytics for how many young people log into the Parliament website, it's very low. We found that a lot of young people end up finding out about a bill or a bill being discussed or a motion on social media. And that's if the Parliament website, someone puts it, or a young member of Parliament like Honorable Keter, Honorable Sakaja, have been online active, kind of, using their platforms to inform the electorate, which is mostly made up of young people, of what's happening. And so what needs to happen is, first, there needs to be a shift in the thinking of what institutional capacity both members of parliament need and young people need on how laws are made and how decisions are made and how policies come to be. Because
and Vani, if I may cut you short, so you're talking about the young people not being involved in tracking the legislative process in Parliament. But looking at, because we are just 2 years to the next election, and young people have always been complaining that they're not being given opportunities. Do you think the solution is in getting elected or getting involved in affairs of the country, even outside an election?
Yes, I think that the essence of meaningful youth engagement is to not only improve the participation of young people in politics, but improve the engagement of the ones they represent. If we are 75.1% under 35 of the population, it's improbable that 150 MPs will represent all of us, right? Because also we are not a monolith, we are diverse. So the essence of this framework that we proposed through this study is to create targeted interventions that not only support the capacity of young people to understand what's happening in policy, but to also have very poignant platforms to push agendas on issues that affect them. So it's not about the ballot, it's about governance. And so whoever is in office, because one thing we found was that when we're coming up with a meaningful youth engagement tracking toolkit is that we engage with young people and ask them, so what kind of model would work for you? And it ranged all the way from young people leading to older people leading. And what we found, which was surprising for us, which is as being a youth-led and youth-driven organization, was young people want to have a partnership with I would say adults or those in leadership. So, and that's essentially what we would call like the 8th ladder of meaningful youth engagement, where you move from just informing and tokenizing young people to seeing them as equal partners in decision making. So what we want to transform is young people's capacity to negotiate, to communicate, and to participate in policy making throughout the process. The thing about politics in the country is that we've made an industry of it, right? And so people generally, including young people, feel that maybe getting engaged in politics is the best opportunity that people in my community will get access to healthcare services, will get a TVET institute, will get the road to my house or the road to my village made. But those are decisions made during the public policy making process. Those are decisions made during the budget allocation process. And so members of parliament, even in themselves, know they have a very difficult time to deliver very big projects within 5 years. Is not a long time, especially for a young MP. What we found is also by the time a young, maybe let me say very fresh MP, first term, goes in and begins to understand the motions and the processes of what's happening in parliament. And then they understand that this is my route to influencing this kind of thing, even as an MCA for maybe access for contraceptives in my county. Time has lapsed. So that we're looking at the gap. So how do we utilize the institution of governance and the value of public participation to make sure that service delivery serves people?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Vania, thank you so much for speaking to us. And of course, the theme for the day tomorrow is youth engagement for global action, looking at the involvement or the engagement of the young people in communities at the national level, as well as the global level, in influencing policy that would detail the future of the people. So now, I wish we had Senator Sakaja, because you would have put into perspective some of those issues that you are raising. He is a young MP, of course, very soon crossing over from the youth bracket, but all the same, he's not able to join us. Up next, after the break, we'll be speaking to three persons that are quite notable in matters politics. We'll be speaking to Steve Ogolla, who's an advocate of the High Court. We'll be speaking to Wanjeri Nderu, who's a communications consultant. We'll also be speaking to Gabriel Muthumo, who's a political analyst. And the conversation is around 3 years ago, the country was going through an election, a very divisive election that had to go to a rerun, a presidential runoff, or rather a fresh election, because the initial one was cancelled by the Supreme Court. We'll be looking at the journey that has been made so far, taking stock of whether we have made the changes that need to be made to ensure that the next vote in 2 years' time, the 9th of August 2022, will be a fair one. We have that conversation after the break.